Hello everyone and welcome to today's lesson. So basically today we'll be looking at the basic principles of strength of materials. Just a quick reminder, during our previous lesson we talked of what strength of materials is. We also looked at what you need to know before you decide to take on this course. Our main focus for today is we'll be dealing with or discussing in detail what we'll be dealing with during the course of this period. Under this course, we'll come to learn about the classification of external forces. We'll classify what external forces are. Just a quick reminder. Remember what a force is. We're saying a force is any action that tends to either maintain or distort the motion of a body. Or a force can change the shape of the body. So basically what this means is that when we talk of external forces, we'll be dealing with forces that will be applied to our solid bodies. Remember in our previous lesson we talked of solid bodies. So in this case we'll be dealing with external forces that are applied to these solid bodies. And then we'll be classifying them as well. The second thing that we'll be dealing with is we'll be looking at practical problems or questions. We'll be dealing with practical things, and we'll be dealing with questions that arise during the study of this course. The third thing that we'll look at is that we'll discuss the main objects of study. What this means is that we'll look at the types of solid bodies. We touched a bit about solid bodies in our previous lesson, but in this case we'll go into details. What a solid body is, what are some of the properties that it should have, and so on and so forth. So these solid bodies are the ones that we'll be using in our problems. And then the fourth thing is that we'll be talking of, or we'll discuss later on, the main hypotheses that are used in mechanics of materials. When we talk of hypothesis, we're simply referring to assumptions that we make. These are theories or assumptions that help us to come up with formulas, and then these formulas are used to solve actual problems or practical examples. So when we make an hypothesis, we're making an assumption that something is happening as a result of this and this. And then we'll use this assumption that we've made to come up with a formula. And then this formula will be used to solve practical examples. So basically this is what we'll be doing during the course of this period. We'll also look at the following. A lot of emphasis or main emphasis is placed on the following. We'll discuss what internal forces are. First we talked of classification of external forces, but then we'll also deal with internal forces. External being applied from outside, while internal, these are forces that are found within the solid body. They are within or inside the solid body. So also place a lot of emphasis on internal forces. The second thing that we'll be looking at is the concept of stress. We'll define what stress is, what types of, what kind of stresses are there. We'll discuss this because it is basically the main principle that is used in mechanics of materials. In Russian, stress is called напряжение. And then the third thing that we'll look at is strains or deformation. Even though I've written strains and deformation in the same line, there's a very big difference between the two, which we'll later on look at. Deformation in Russian is called deformatia. So these are things that we'll be looking at during our course. These are things that we'll be dealing with. So, like I said, we'll look at some properties of solid bodies. Remember, we said a solid body is any material that is used in construction. We'll classify it better later on, but for now let us look at things that can qualify to be called elements of construction or solid bodies. So here are some of the properties of elements of construction. We are saying an element of construction is any material, a solid body, that is used in construction. E.g., we can use steel, we can use iron, we can also use wood. So these things that are used in construction, they're supposed to have certain properties for them to be used in construction. We cannot just go around picking anything that we feel like using. So we look at the following four main properties when we're talking of construction elements. The first and most important is that it must be strong. What this means is that it should be able to resist the external forces that have been applied to it. It should not collapse under external loads. A building, I think we all know that we strive, when civil engineers are building, they strive to make a building as strong as it can be. So for this to be realized, we need to have construction materials that are strong. Therefore, we are saying elements of one of the properties of the elements of construction is that it should be strong. When we talk of strength, basically strength is defined as the ability of a structure to resist the influence of external forces that are acting upon it. In Russian, strength is what we've written here as prочность. So the ability of that material, of that building or material to resist external forces that have been applied to it is what we're calling strength here. The second property is that it must be hard or rigid. What this means is that it should not deform very much under external influences. When we talk of deformation, we're saying deformation is the change in either size or shape of a solid body. So basically, we know in actual sense that every material that is used in construction is capable of deformation. It can deform under external forces. But then when we are focusing on elements of construction, we are saying it should not deform very much under external influences. Quite alright, we expect it to deform, but it should not deform in such a way that it totally alters the shape of the element of construction. The third principle, before we introduce the third principle, we are saying, in other words, we can use the term stiffness to refer to this principle that we've just discussed. In Russian, this principle would, or this property would be жидкость. The third principle, or the third property of construction elements is that they must be stable. What this means is that it must keep the specified form of equilibrium. It must be stable and keep the specified form of equilibrium. It should be able to resist change in its form or shape under external forces. This is clear on itself. We're saying at first, when we're using construction materials, they have a certain shape that they come with. So basically, when we talk of stability, we're talking of these shapes being maintained during the time this solid body is being used. The fourth and final principle that a construction material should have is that it should be durable. When we talk of durability, we are simply saying this is the ability of a structure to maintain the above mentioned properties, which is that of strength, stiffness, and stability. So it should be durable, meaning it should be able to maintain the above mentioned properties during the exploitation time. The exploitation time is a time in which this material is being used. So yeah, this is how we'll conclude today's lesson. I hope to see you during the next lesson.